Hi everyone, how's it going? As I've been talking about recently, like with Margaret Atwood's novel The Testaments, this seems to be the year of literary sequels, and here's another one. Andre Aciman's novel Find Me is the sequel to his much beloved novel Call Me By Your Name, which was originally published in 2007, I believe, but which of course found a lot more audience a couple years ago when there was the new film of Call Me By Your Name, and that made people fall in love with the story of Elio and Oliver and their romantic tryst over one hot Italian summer. So this new novel continues on with their story and answers the question a lot of people have been asking: what happened to them next? So I'm trying to avoid any spoilers talking about this, but I will talk about some of the content of the novel. And I feel like I have to talk about the original novel, Call Me By Your Name, as well, because the ending of that novel is quite different from how the film ends. And I think people who have only watched the film will be a bit surprised at how, at the ending of the novel of Call Me By Your Name, we actually see a long flash forward into the future when Oliver and Elio meet again. But this is only a very brief section at the end of Call Me By Your Name when they come together again in Italy, and nothing is really resolved about whether they're going to stay together again or not. But it's also said there that Elio's father, Samuel, or Sammy as a nickname, he has died at quite a young age. So I think it poses an interesting problem to have a sequel now to continue on with that story, because we know that they are going to get together again, but of course we don't know what happens if they actually get together again, And this novel does answer that question, but it takes quite a while to get there. It builds up a lot of anticipation. I think a lot of readers will probably be quite frustrated to get to their story together. I will say it doesn't happen towards the end of the novel, but I'm not going to say what actually happens between them. So the actual story in this novel, in the lead up to that, is following a lot of the story of Sammy, again, from his point of view. And this is obviously a point in the future after the majority of Call Me By Your Name, but it's before the very end of the novel when it's been revealed that he's died. And so it shows Samuel at a point in the future when he's divorced from his wife and he's traveling by train in Italy, and he's going to see Elio, his son, who has now started working as a pianist. And on that train ride he has an encounter with a quite younger woman. They start having this long, deep conversation about life and romance and all the things, and their relationship starts to turn romantic itself over the course of a couple days. And then the novel moves forward again to a future point when Elio is living in Paris now and a much more successful pianist. And he encounters an older man again who they start having dinner and have more long, deep conversations about relationships and life, and this starts turning romantic as well. And then the novel moves forward again into the future to pick up with Oliver, who's in America working as a professor, and he's just moving. He has a wife, and he's had children who are pretty much grown up now, and it follows how he feels this mixture of desire for people at a party he's throwing for two different people, for a young man and a young woman. And so it follows all these different encounters. Aciman seems to specialize or really focus on this romantic moment of meeting someone who completely upturns your world, and you just sort of become completely obsessed with them and have this really, not just a sexual attraction, but a real deep, psychological and heart-to-heart connection with them. And I think the novel explores that in a really meaningful way. I got quite involved in a lot of these conversations that the people have talking about life, and it made me think about the dynamics of desire and passion, and how the effect of time and distance and the imagination has upon all of those things. And it's quite a complex subject. But the actual execution and the way he goes about it, I had a few problems with, because my main issue with it is a lot of this novel is heavy in dialogue, and so a lot of these conversations border into pretentiousness, talking about these big issues. And I'll show you an example of what I'm talking about. One section, there's a character named Michel, and he says at one point, "Fate, if it exists at all," he said, "has strange ways of teasing us with patterns that may not be patterns at all, but that hint at vestigial meaning still being worked out." I mean, who talks like that? Even very high-minded people who are very educated and from a certain class, I still don't think that they have these long discussions like this. And, I mean, it's not entirely unrealistic. A lot of the times if we meet a new lover and had this very deep heart-to-heart conversation, it might go into these sort of lofty thoughts, but still, there are so many instances like this throughout the novel that it just sort of feels a bit unrealistic. I mean, these are characters in a novel. We're supposed to believe that these situations could actually happen, and I think it would have worked better more if he had just gone into the thoughts of his characters. I mean, these characters might have thoughts like this, but wouldn't really articulate them like that so much, because I don't think a lot of people would actually talk like that, and if they do, you would sort of snigger and laugh at just the loftiness of this conversation and this statement being made, But like I said, that's not to say I didn't find it meaningful. I mean, I think a lot of his ideas and the things that he talks about are really interesting. It's just the way that he goes about executing them. And then another main issue that I had was that there's very little representation of female desire in this novel. I mean, Sammy does meet a young woman in the beginning, and you get a lot of her dialogue as well and her perspective. But it's all mainly from male desire, and there's many instances through both this and the original novel where women are slighted and their desires really aren't taken into account. And I appreciate it's all from a male perspective, and that's not unrealistic. I mean, that happens quite a lot, that men will meet somebody new and then they'll just sort of brush off the wife or the girlfriend or whoever. But that happens quite a lot, and as a novelist, you think you'd want to give some fictional space to exploring that female perspective, or at least like exploring the men's guilt about just sort of brushing these women aside, but they don't really seem to feel any of that, and that just bothers me a little in a novel which is otherwise like very progressive. I mean, I like how he represents this fluidity of sexuality, that people have sex with both men and women and are attracted to them. It's more about the romantic connection that they feel with other people. And I love how when the film of Call Me by Your Name came out, the writer Olivia Lane tweeted that my sexuality is Elio, and I love how we're sort of getting beyond these borders of sort of like gay or straight or bisexual. It's more just about the feeling of the person. And I think Elio is somebody who really embodies that sensation, There is also in this novel, I just want to point out, because one of the most famous scenes from Call Me By Your Name is a scene involving a peach. And you don't get any instances like that in this new novel of fruit being sexually ravaged, but there is a reference to figs quite strongly in sort of metaphorical imagery rather than a fig itself. So that's another fun thing about it. Andre Aciman obviously has something about fruit, but that makes sense because obviously using imagery of fruit has been done a lot and is quite common when talking about sex and sexuality. So overall, I did really enjoy this novel, and it made me think a lot and feel a lot. It made me had that sort of slightly yearning sensation for that sensation of meeting somebody for the first time who just completely overwhelms you, and you suddenly feel seen and understood in a way that you don't in just ordinary life of meeting lots of other people who seem to just glance over you. And it gets in a really meaningful way all the psychological complexities of that. But I do think some readers who are really caught up in the story of Elio and Oliver and want to get right to their story will feel a bit frustrated because it takes quite a while for this novel to get there. But I will say, I think it is worth it, and I did enjoy how the novel ends. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Are you really excited for a sequel to Call Me By Your Name? Are you caught up on all the romantic excitement of finding out what happens with Elio and Oliver? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll speak to you again soon. Bye, everyone.